I am going to the hospital. Give me all of the drugs. Never doing it again.
Ooh, it's bright. Too bright. Too bright. Brighter. Darker.
Good? I think this is good. I have a very limited amount of time, so I thought I would do a quick home birth story. Well, I guess it's not quick because it wasn't quick. I think it was about 8 hours. I had a whole spiel planned on how I was going to start this off and like go into it. And of course I thought about it at like 3 a.m. and now that it's morning time, I don't remember any of it. I do have the dryer going on in the background, so if you hear some white noise going on, it's the dryer. Okay, so I'm gonna jump right into it. I want to start off by saying it was honestly amazing and such a crazy and surreal experience. Like the way I feel about it now is completely different than how I felt about it before I had a home birth, during like labor and everything, and after. It's just like all of those stages of labor, delivery, birth, everything, they're all completely different. So I'll start by saying I really wanted to have a home birth with my first, but so many people told me I couldn't do it because they said it was dangerous. They said I wouldn't be able to physically do it, and it got to my head and I was actually terrified. And so for my first, again, this is all personal experience, I went to the hospital, I was induced, and it was awful. It was such an awful experience. And so for the second, I said that I would never do that ever again. So I had my home birth. I was due June 4th, or I wasn't due. My estimated due date was June 4th. And I feel like so many people hyper-focus on this estimated due date. All it is an estimate. You can go before, you can go on the day, you can go after the day. It's an estimate. And that's what I really liked about the midwives. They emphasize that it's an estimate. It could happen before, it could happen after. Like that day really wasn't that important. Whereas when I had Maximus, my first, they were like, oh, it's your due date. You should be going into labor. You're not, you need to go to the hospital, which I think is all BS. June 4th was my estimated due date, and I really wasn't having any signs of labor at all leading up to that date. I'm gonna post a few pictures. The only signs that like I kind of had were Braxton Hicks, and those are just like contractions getting your body ready. They're false labor contractions, I believe. Let me look it up really quick. Yeah, so it says false labor pains, and they're just to get your body ready for labor. So I had a few Braxton Hicks, and again, I'll post the pictures right here. My stomach looked so crazy whenever I would have these contractions, and I honestly only had them like 2 or 3 times, and that was all. Never had them again, but the few times that I did have them, it was a little weird. So my due date, June 4th, came, nothing was happening. I went into the midwife's office for an appointment that day because it was my due date, and they were like, yeah, doesn't seem like anything is happening. They don't check or anything. They can if you want them to, but I was like, no, you don't need to check me. You don't need to do anything. I feel fine. I felt nothing. And I told them, I was like, nothing is gonna happen. Like, I feel totally fine. So they're like, okay, you're good. Come back in a few days because you will technically be over your due date and we wanna do a non-stress test on you. Again, let me look this up. And a non-stress test, all it does is it monitors your baby for 20 to 30 minutes to see how the baby is doing, and if you're kind of having contractions, to see how that baby is responding to contractions. So I went in for my non-stress test on June 8th. When the test was done, the midwives were like, oh, here's a contraction, you're having contractions all over the place. And I was like, I don't feel anything. I was having contractions left and right, and I felt nothing. Like, I didn't feel my stomach tightening, I felt no pain, I didn't feel crampy, I felt absolutely nothing. So this was on June 8th, and the midwife that was there that day, she's like, I don't know, I think I'm gonna stock up on some coffee today because I'm feeling a little something in the air. And I was like, okay, yeah, right. So I went home, nothing was happening. I felt totally fine. I went to bed, everything was good. But then I woke up at, I think it was 2 or 2:30 in the morning, and I felt like I had to go to the bathroom very bad. So I went to the bathroom and nothing really happened, but that like intense bathroom sensation kept coming, and I was like, So I came back in bed, and then like all of a sudden it got a lot stronger. Like that need to like, I don't know how to describe it. It like you need to go to the bathroom really, really bad. It kept coming, and it kept coming stronger. So I was standing at the side of our bed, and Anthony just like randomly all of a sudden woke up, and he was like, what's happening? And I was like, I think something is happening. So I went into our bathroom and I started timing these contractions. I didn't know they were contractions. I kind of like had an inkling they were contractions, but I started timing them, and I actually still have them saved on my contraction app that I was using because it's just really cool to still have them. So when I started timing them, it was 2:35 in the morning, and I have them all right here. So it started at 2:35, and these are all of my contractions that I was having. And I timed them until 3:30. So they kind of went from like 4 to 6 minutes apart to all of a sudden like 2 minutes and then 1 minute apart. So I was on the bathroom floor. Anthony actually was taking care of Maximus because he woke up and he was like ready to go. It was 3 a.m. and he was like, oh, it's time to wake up, let's go. So Anthony took care of Maximus. Anthony's mom came to pick up Maximus, and I was on the bathroom floor going through these contractions. Anthony came in and he's like, hey, maybe we should call the midwives. And I was like, you need to call them. So he did. He called them, and he told me, he's told me the conversation that they had because it's really funny. Obviously, they don't want to get out of bed and come to someone's house if it's not true labor. So they were asking how far my contractions are, how I'm feeling, what's going on. And at that point, again, it was like 3:30, and this had started at 2:30. So after all of the talk and the debate, they decided to come. They felt like it was true labor, and it was intense, for me at least. So the midwives came at about 4:30, and between maybe like 3:30 and 4:30, I had lost my mucus plug. I was in some intense pain, and so I decided to run a bath and just sit in the bath. But with Maximus and with Theodora, my labor pain was all in my back, so the bath like wasn't deep enough to get my back. So it hurt a lot. The midwives got here at 4:30, and they actually took a picture of the moon when they came, like when they showed up. I thought it was amazing. I loved it. When they came, I was still in the bath, and they were like, hey, we need to check you. Like, let's see how everything is going. So they checked me, and I was actually 6 centimeters dilated. 6 centimeters. I honestly thought I was like at a 2 or a 3. I don't know why. The pain that I was feeling, definitely, I should have thought I was more dilated, but I was at a 6. So they started filling up the home birth tub that I had set up, and I got out, went into the home birth tub and started laboring in there, and all of a sudden like labor really died down a lot. I was actually falling asleep during contractions, and the contractions weren't coming as intensely and as forcibly, and I was falling asleep, which Thank God, because I am not, like, I love to sleep. So they were kind of getting a little worried. My cat was by me almost the whole time, which was so cute, and it was just very, very sweet of her. But because they started dying down, the midwives were like, hey, you should get on the bed so we can check again just to see what's going on. And at this point, it was probably 6 a.m., 6 to 7 a.m. So I got onto the bed and they made me get into different positions. So they had me go on all fours, kind of lay on my sides, both sides. And so I labored in bed for a little bit. At this point, it was probably close to 8 o'clock. And they're like, okay, let's check you again. And they checked and they were like, okay, you're 8 centimeters. So I went from 6 to 8 in the few hours. And they said that my water was in the way, my water bag. So they asked me if it was okay if they broke it rather than me wait for it to break, because the water bag could be causing the labor to be like slow and to slow down and for things to not go as quickly. So I was like, you know what, go ahead and break it. They broke my water bag and instantly things got super intense. Every time I had a contraction, I couldn't move. I wasn't comfortable. I was still laying in bed and they're like, you can get back in the tub if you want. I couldn't move. I was like stuck in the bed because it was so painful. I couldn't move. I didn't want to move. So I continued laboring in bed. And like I said, they broke my water at like 8:15, and I just wanted nothing to do with anything. And all of a sudden I felt the urge to push. And while they were like helping me through everything, they said that the baby needed to twist a little. So they instructed me again to get on all fours. And at this point, because the pain was so intense, I did not want to get on all fours. I didn't want to move. And they were like, you need to get on all fours so the baby can rotate, so she can come out, and then you're done. I did. I got on all fours, and like I don't remember the pain, obviously, but I know it was intense. It was something that I thought I couldn't deal with, but I did. I got on all fours, and I literally felt her, the baby, move. And the midwives, I don't know if they said something or if they like kind of released a oh, and she was literally born like a minute after that. It was amazing. So it all happened honestly super quickly. It started at 2:30. Things got intense between like 3:30, and she was born at 8:40. So that was my entire labor, and it was so peaceful. I was at home. I was in the bath. I had people looking out for me in my own home. And honestly, the midwives weren't upstairs with me. So I gave birth in our bedroom, which is upstairs. They weren't up here for the majority of my labor. They stayed downstairs. I didn't want to be bothered unless something was happening, but they like didn't bother me at all. They let me do it all on my own. They only probably, when they got here at between 4 and 8, they probably only came upstairs 3 times. The 2 times to check me, and then for her birth. The rest of the time, I just did everything by myself. Anthony was here, the cat was here. It was amazing. So she was born, and the midwives did say that I was hemorrhaging quite a bit. And hemorrhaging is you're bleeding out. So the head midwife was like, I have Pitocin right here because you are hemorrhaging. But she was like, I'm not gonna give it to you yet. I wanna try these drops that we also carry. I forgot what they were called. I believe they were called like Angelica drops, something like that. And she said, I'm gonna put a few drops under your tongue. It's gonna taste really, really, really bad, but you need to keep it under your tongue for like a few seconds. So she gave me the drops. They tasted horrible. It tasted like bad whiskey. And a few, maybe like a minute or two later, I stopped hemorrhaging completely. And she was like, okay, you're good. You're not hemorrhaging. You don't need Pitocin. Like, the drops helped you. You're all good. So that was amazing. And then all like after birth, after labor, just being at home was like the best ever. I hung out up here right after her birth. We ordered a bunch of food and we just hung out upstairs, relaxed. We took a nap, and just being at home was the best thing ever. A lot of people were like, oh, but what about, you have to be monitored after birth. So the midwives actually stay for a few, I think 4 to 6 hours after your birth to monitor you. But again, they were downstairs. Like, they didn't bother us up here at all. They only came upstairs when they had to come upstairs. They, like, during my labor, they cleaned our entire house. So that's what they were doing while I was in labor. Like, they weren't just sitting downstairs. They were cleaning our house. They got food ready for us. They organized the baby's room. They organized my son's room, because this happened very, we didn't know when I was gonna go into labor, so like the rooms they were ready, but they weren't like picked up, they weren't clean, so they did everything. So they stay the 4 to 6 hours after. They come the next day to check on you, then they come like 2 days later, then they come a week later, then they come 2 weeks later, and that's it for their like in-home checks. And then you do like the normal usual 6-week checkup in their office, and then a 6-month follow-up in their office, which I just did. And that was my home birth story. Like, that is all that happened. It was, again, I'm so glad I did it. And what I was talking about before, about feeling a certain way before labor, during labor, and after labor. Before labor, I was so anxious and nervous because I didn't know when it was gonna start, and not knowing really made me super anxious. Like, I'm not a plan ahead type of person, but something like this, like, it made me very nervous, not knowing when it was gonna happen. But obviously, I got through that. And then during labor, I was like, I am never doing this again. I am going to the hospital, give me all of the drugs, never doing it again. And then right after birth, I was like, this was amazing. I am never going to the hospital. I will have home births for the rest of my life. I think the recovery was so much easier, and not the recovery like right after birth, but the weeks and the months following birth was so much easier for me. I felt totally fine. I didn't have those extreme come downs that I had with Maximus. With Maximus, I got an epidural. I got Pitocin. I got one other thing. I'm not sure what it was. Like, I have no idea. But, I mean, those are drugs going into your system that you need to come off of. And I didn't have any of that this time around. And it was amazing. Such an amazing experience. So, if you're considering a home birth and you are able to do it, you should do it, because it was truly like the most amazing experience ever. I have probably said amazing 50 times in this video, because there's no other way to describe it. It was peaceful, it was relaxing, I felt safe, I felt comfortable, and I didn't feel those things at the hospital. So to go from like one extreme to the other, it was magical. I really hope you enjoyed my home birth story. I hope to maybe have another home birth story in the future. We'll see. But until then, I will see you next time for another video. Bye!